Okay, so now we're going to take the peel away and hopefully some of the paint down with it from this patch I have up here on the ceiling. Hi, here I am. As you can see again, I'll repeat, I have my gloves on, I have my face shield on, I have my hat on, long sleeve shirt, long pants, boots. I have my putty knife here, plastic, flexible. Have a metal putty knife here. Small one for getting in small areas to scrape paint off that won't come off otherwise. I have a metal scrub brush here. I have a sponge and a bucket of water. Hopefully a sponge that has one of those rough sides and one of the smooth sides, often used for tile or for washing your car. And I'll get started. Below me, right below the area I'm working, I've got a trash bag that's open because when this comes off, it's going to want to come off. And you're going to have someplace to drop it. It's going to be a big sloppy mess. What you do is you take your wide plastic putty knife and you choose a small area you're going to start to work on. I'm going to work on this area right here. And I'm just going to try and disadhere a little bit from the edge. And it will kind of stick together. Not all of it's going to come off at the same time. But most of it will come off with this. The big, thickest, heaviest pieces of paint, just use like a spatula. Think like you're going to take up a piece of pizza that's stuck a little bit to a cookie sheet, which this metal ceiling kind of is like. And then hopefully your pieces of paper that you put up here are small enough that they're manageable. A little stuff is going to fall as you do this. That's okay. That's why you need the tarp at the bottom. Then eventually it's all going to come off. There's a lot of peel away on here. There's a lot of layers of lead paint that it's taken off. And I'm just going to drop it right into the trash bag. Now there's quite a bit of residue that's still left up here. If you take your spatula, you can kind of scrape it off. I mean, don't expect to be perfectly clean when you come off. But you can see that what is left is pretty soft. And some other pieces that are like big, thick areas of paint are actually still coming off. I'm going to try and get those biggest areas first. Any debris that I can scrape off with this putty knife is going to come first. And then you're going to reach a point where you really can't scrape much else off underneath that area. It's just too sticky and it's just adhering. And so you can see a bunch of it sticking to this putty knife. This goopy nature is what it's supposed to do. So then what you do once you get most that you can get off, you get your sponge, get it wet, and you wring it out so it's a damp sponge. You don't want it dripping wet. You just want it to be damp. And then you take that, and I usually start with the rough side, and then after I do that, I go to the smooth side, and you just don't try and get it perfectly clean with a swipe. Really, all I'm doing right now, it looks like just smearing this stuff off. But as you smear it, what you're really doing is just transferring it from the sponge. Don't try and make it clean at first. Just get as much onto it as possible. Then you take it in your water, you wring it out, and you're transferring this residue from the ceiling to your water. And just keep doing that over and over and over again. It'll take several passes, especially if you're working on a large area and have a lot of thick paint. And bring it out. And it looks better with each pass. Now it isn't going to be perfect. There are going to be some areas where you have paint that's still stuck on there that you're going to have to scrape off for a little bit. Or if they're thick enough and you really can't scrape them, you may have to do another application of peel away. But if you find you're repeatedly going to have to do more than one application of peel away in an area, then you probably need to use a thicker layer, or you need to leave it on longer, or both. The only way you know you've probably left it on too long is if it dries out on you. Or if you find leaving it on a longer period of time just doesn't make much more difference. Okay. So in this little area I pulled off, I've gotten most of what I can just through the use of my sponge. Now you can see there's some areas here that are still sticking. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my metal putty knife, and you don't want to scratch the ceiling. You only want to touch with the flat edge of this, not with the corner of it. And you can see this is, even though it looks like this is stuck on, this is very, very soft, and it's peeling off. Part of the reason I have this one, you can hear a little noise. Listen to this as I move this along it. You can hear that it's actually still sticking a little bit. It's a little bit of dry paint. Now, it isn't really totally dry. There is some liquefaction of it, but it will require a little scraping in this area right here of this tool. Once you get off the bigger pieces with this, you'll find you have some little areas that are kind of hard to get with this metal knife. That's when the scrub brush tool comes in. These are metal stiff bristles, and I basically take that and get a little moisture on it so you're not sanding the area. You don't really want to sand it and create dust. You want to keep everything moist because that's part of what makes this a safe removal method for lead-based paints, is that you're not putting a lot of dust in the air. It all is basically staying in a kind of suspended in liquid. So then I take this scrub brush and I just use it on the ceiling. Be careful, use this on an inconspicuous area. Make sure the stiffness of your bristles and the hardness of that is not enough to scrape your tiles, your ceiling tiles. Because you don't want to go to all this work. And I can use my sponge to go back and wipe again in the areas where I've scraped and scrubbed. Okay, looking better. I'll make another pass here. Again, don't use the corner of the metal tool, only use the flat edge. Might have to use a little bit of elbow grease like I am here. A lot of times these areas that don't come off very well don't come off because peel away really didn't get to it. And that can either happen because it wasn't thick enough, it wasn't left on long enough, or because it just became disadhered a little bit and an air pocket formed in there because the paper fell down, formed an air pocket because you weren't putting enough pressure on it. But you're always going to have little areas like this no matter how good your technique is. So you just want to have as few of them as possible, and you want to but that's basically the procedure. Now you keep going over this with these basic tools until everything's gone. If you get a little piece you absolutely cannot get off, you can put peel away on it another time. And if you do it in a small area, you can just do a small pass, put a little dowel, peel away, say right here, put a piece of paper over it, and then you may have to leave it on nearly as long as you would otherwise. It could be ready to, take off in a matter of, 8 hours or less, depending on, if you have a very small, thin, stubborn layer left. But that's basically it. You repeat this procedure over and over again. I've only taken off one of my 4 sets of paper here. I'll have to go on to the other ones next. But you basically do it to all those pieces of paper, and you clean everything off, and then you should have a piece of tile that looks like this one over here, which is pretty much bare metal and ready to go on to be repainted or finished, however you want to do it.